Hey guys, it's Caroline, and today I just wanted to talk to you about why I started a rescue organization when I was 25 with no experience with two other ladies, and the three things I think it takes to successfully start and run an animal rescue. All right, here we go. So, I moved to Texas when I was 21, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, to be honest with you. And I got a job at a local animal shelter. I started out as a kennel tech, and then I moved into their rescue and foster coordinator position. And I've always been a big animal lover, so I knew a lot about dogs and cats. I volunteered in shelters in high school, and I did a little bit of college, and in college, I volunteered at shelters. But I had never, worked in one, obviously, and I was super, the no-kill girl, which, funny, here we are again. But I mean, I didn't know what I was talking about, when I was younger. And when it comes to no-kill, I mean. And so what happened is I moved to Texas, needed a job, and I found a job listing for an animal shelter, and the job listing was very good. It, pulled me in. But soon after I began working there, I realized that the live release rate wasn't super great. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't super great. 60 to 65% for those of you who know, industry standards, I guess. And I learned a lot. If you didn't know, Texas is the highest kill state in the whole country when it comes to animal shelters. And I didn't know that before moving to Texas. But, I guess I believe in things happening for a reason. So, sure, I guess part of me likes to think, I moved to Texas because this is my passion. This is what I'm supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, Texas is the highest kill state in the country. And I was working in a Texas shelter right outside of Houston, which is pretty tough. There's estimated over 1 million strays just in the Houston area. So there I was from 22 to 25 working, and I got to go to an American Pets Alive conference in 2019, and it changed my life, to be honest with you. It was so cool to go to that conference and see people doing just cutting edge things to save animal lives. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I brought a lot of ideas back. And what I found was it was a lot harder to do than I thought it would be, for a lot of nuanced reasons that if you're in the industry, you probably know much about. But I was still persistent. And so I kept trying, and I kept trying, and I kept trying. And then 2020 rolls around. Personally, I broke up with this guy. I moved out of his house. I was on my own for the first time. I was listening to Tony Robbins and waking up at 5 a.m. and running and stuff. I don't know if you've ever gone through moments like that. But I was super all about improving myself. Still am. And I got this idea in my head. Well, what if I started a nonprofit? And what if it could be the answer to all the problems? If only. No. But that's what I thought, and that's where it began. So if you didn't know, 2020 was actually a really good time for animal shelters because intake decreased. A lot of shelters that was the first time they really started playing with managed intake where they're not just taking everything in. And fostering became really big. People were working from home. It was such a good time to get a pet. All of these things. Well, the little dirty secret of COVID was that no spay-neuter was happening. And that ended up biting us in the butt later on, at least in my opinion. I'm sure people have a lot of different opinions as to what happened. But 2020, regardless, was a decent year. And I had this hard thing when I was at the shelter where I didn't want to leave because I felt like if I left, I was giving up on the animals somehow. But also I really wanted to start this nonprofit. And so 2020 just gave me the golden ticket because the numbers were looking better in the shelter. I felt better leaving. And unfortunately, they went back the other way after 2020. But regardless, at that time, I decided to leave and start the nonprofit. And I was a chipper 25-year-old with way less wrinkles. Oh my God. But I really wanted to start this nonprofit. And so I met with two ladies at a coffee shop and it began. The paperwork and the filing and the logo creation and the Facebook page. And I was so excited. I took an overnight job at a grocery store. And I was like, by night, I'm going to work. And by day, I'm going to build this nonprofit. And it's going to be amazing. And it was so freaking hard. It's hard working overnights, for sure. And then trying to run this nonprofit. And I didn't know what I was doing. And so the first advice I got was just call people who know what they're doing and ask them, how did you do it? And so that's what I did. I started up, I called a bunch of people who ran rescues that I knew. Luckily, being in the industry, in the animal shelter, I was a rescue foster coordinator. I had some decent contacts. And so I called them and I asked them a lot of questions. And I remember they were kind of pessimistic. And it kind of made me upset because I was like, why are you being pessimistic? This should be exciting, And now I totally get it because I feel like if somebody called me up and was like, hey, I want to start a rescue, I would say the same thing. One of the best things someone's told to me, and they're still a good mentor of mine, is it's going to be 10 times hard. Everything you want to do is going to be 10 times harder than you think and 20 times more expensive. And I was like, cool. Anyway, but it really started out just networking and getting to know people in the industry. And, we had a very specific mission. It was to decrease the euthanasia rates in that facility that I worked at and the county as a whole. There weren't a lot of cat programming, feral cat TNR programming. So that's where I started. And I made friends with the spay-neuter clinic, and that was a double bonus because not only were they a really well structured, long-standing nonprofit in our community, so I could learn just from that, but also they were a spay-neuter clinic and they took pity on me and they started giving me spay-neuter spots, and I started TNRing cats. And so I would come home from work and sleep 3 hours or not sleep at all because I'd get off at 4. And then I'd go trap cats or I'd go pick up cats and then I'd drive them to the clinic. And it was a mess. It was a mess, to be honest with you. But we pushed through and then it got to a point where you have to have 3 people to run a nonprofit, to start a nonprofit in Texas. And it got to the point where honestly, I feel I upset one board member because I had really big ideas and terrible follow through because I had no idea like what was actually possible, to be honest with you. I've got a lot better with that. I still have big ideas, but I have a better ability to like initiate those good ideas, I guess. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is it was really hard, and it got to the point where it was honestly just me doing a lot of stuff. And I really considered folding and just being like, okay, I can't do this. But there was this itch inside of me where it's like, somebody's got, like, these animals are dying. Like, somebody's got to figure this out. And like, I guess it could be me. Maybe. I don't know, because I feel like I'm terrible at this, but maybe it could be me. And so I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I found some more people to help, and things got a little better organized. Okay, now we're starting to get noticed a little bit. And I figured out the things I was good at, and I figured out the things I was not good at, and what I needed help with, and started to find the people and the things to make it happen. I said I was going to talk about the 3 things you need to run a successful rescue organization. So I don't want to get too, because I could just talk about like the origins of the nonprofit for so long, but I do want to get into that. So fast forward to now, we have a paid staff of 7 people. We run an adoption center. We've done over 450 adoptions this year. We run community outreach programming, all this stuff. It's still super hard. It's still super hard. And I still have just a bazillion things to learn, I'm sure. But the one thing I think I can speak to is perhaps 3 character traits I think one needs to just even be able to get anything off the ground when it comes to running an animal rescue. And those 3 things are being passionate, being resilient, my broken nail. What a good finger to choose. And being consistent. Passion, resilience, consistency. And that may seem so lame, but when I'm really thinking about it, like, that's what it took. One, I've always been like a little bit of an entrepreneur at heart. And I tried a little of everything. I tried a lot of things. And I could never stay consistent to them because I really wasn't passionate about it. But saving animals, I'm so passionate about. And it's literally the only reason that we've been able to sustain, I think, for so long. And it's because after all the times I messed up, even after all the times things did not go as planned, even after all the days where I was like, that day was so hard and I don't want to do it again, I still did it because I was so incredibly passionate. And I have to say thank you to that American Pets Alive conference and all of the great people who do amazing things in animal welfare, because it inspired me so much that passion, it never faded out completely. Sure, I get tired sometimes and it goes away a little bit, but it's never burns out. So passion is number 1. Number 2 is having strong resolve. You have to be resilient. And I'm sure that goes for any business that anyone would run. You have to have resiliency because you're just going to fall on your face so many times. One of my favorite quotes, Elon Musk, is being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. And I'm like, oh, I feel heard. So true. And I follow another creator on here who's a business person. And they drew this map of running a business. And it starts out like optimism, and then it goes where you like start out, you're super optimistic, and then you're like, oh, this is way harder than I thought it was. And it goes down, 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 down. And it gets into this part where they say it's the pits of despair. And I'm like, yes, it's heard. Like, I feel heard, right? The pits of despair. And then it comes to cautious optimism. And it slowly goes up. I'm trying to remember it all. Alex Hormozy is the one who created that. If you can find it somehow, if you're interested. But that being said, it's just so hard. You know, there's been weeks where I didn't know if I was going to be able to pay people. There's been weeks I didn't know if I was going to be able to pay our rent. Like our AC broke. We had to evacuate all of our animals. And your girl didn't know if she'd be able to handle it. But somehow she did. And a lot of people helped. Don't get me wrong. And I guess if I had to throw a third character trait in there, I don't know if it'd be a character trait, but thing you need to be able to do if you're going to run a successful organization, it would be to delegate. But anyway, back on track here. Resiliency. So important. So important. So we have passion, we have resiliency, consistency. This is the one thing that I think has just made us really grow rapidly, was when I was able to be consistent. And there were a lot of things that I had to do in order to get there. And some of it was just like, you just have to keep showing up. Like you just have to keep showing up. And that came from the passion and having some sort of resiliency. But the biggest change I saw was when we opened up the adoption center and we had to pay rent. We had to pay rent. And so that meant we had to consistently bring in funding. And then we had animals there being cared for. And so then we had to consistently bring in funding to feed them and consistently bring in funding to care for them. And then we were there. And so the only way to make it work was to like be open almost all of the time because we needed the adoptions. And so that's what we did. And so then that turned into, well, if we had to be here all the time, we have to pay ourselves because, like, again, for me, I was at that point like 27, 28. And I don't have any, like, I worked at an animal shelter before, right? So like, I didn't know savings. Like I had to pay, if I was going to be there, I needed to like, I'm not me, like I'm just me and my dogs, my dog and my cats. Like I got to feed them. So anyway, well, when you start paying people, then that's another thing. You can't just pay people, right? So these things started adding up onto me where it forced me to be consistent. And then when we started having struggles, it was like, all right, well, now I need to build my board. I need to have monthly board meetings. And that drove consistency because then every month I had to share our finances and talk about what was going on in front of a group of people who may or may not critique or ask questions, right? And so that forced consistency. And really, those are the three things that I think you just have to have if you're going to start a rescue that's going to be successful. And yeah, delegation, it's a good side note, a good side thing to remember. You can't do it all by yourself. Maybe you can if you had like an independent rescue thing, but you're really not going to be able to make great impact with that. It's going to be very limited because as humans, we're limited, finite humans. So anyway, that's really all I have to say. I am so grateful that I started my organization, and I'm really proud of the impact that we've had. But it was really hard. And I don't know if I would have done it if I knew how hard it was. But, I guess that's why we don't know how hard things are before we start them. So anyway, that's all I have to say for today. And yeah, keep saving animals.